be talking about the joy that service brings today. We talked a lot about on Tuesday the importance of having a biblical basis for service in our homes. And we talked about 8 or 9 verses in particular that serve as a foundation to teach our children that service, the idea of service, originated with God, and that Jesus embodies the whole concept of being a servant. And even he came not to be served, but to serve. So we talked about a lot of important things, foundational principles for service on Tuesday, and how we need to build service into our lesson plans and make it a priority. But today I want to talk to you about a different part of service, and that is the joy that comes from serving others. We found that the more we serve as a family, the more God surprises us with bringing us joy in unexpected ways. One of the things we talked about on Tuesday was an example of a service project. And so forgive me for using the word project. People are never projects, but just for lack of a better word, we were working with Project Angel Tree, which is a ministry to prisoners and to children whose parents are prisoners. So for Christmas one year, we delivered a bunch of presents, my husband and all of our kids and I, to a family whose dad was in prison. So we hit the mom just on the wrong day. I can't imagine how hard that would be, how hard her life was. She was really upset that we had intruded, although we had let her know we were coming. And she was yelling and screaming and cursing. And so we just left the presents on her front porch. We figured at some point she might want them for her children. And I can remember talking to the boys, and that may be one of the most valuable lessons we learned about service, is that as we serve others because we love them and out of obedience to God, and we really have to leave the results to God. And we never know how God is going to use the way we serve others in their lives. We might not ever see it. We might not know till we get to heaven. But one thing we do know is that when we serve the least of these, that it's like we've done it unto Jesus. And if you've ever had a child that was lonely or hurting or sick, and somebody not in the family goes out of their way to do something special for your child, you get that feeling that that person has done it for you more than they've done it for your child who was hurt or needy. That's how Jesus feels. He says, when we serve other people, it is like we are doing it for him. So if we love Jesus and we want to do something that's meaningful to him, we lay down our lives for others. And homeschooling moms, I just want to tell you that I believe that homeschooling is one of those acts of service where we lay down our lives for our children. In big ways, many people have given up careers or things they wanted to do with their lives in order to homeschool. And but also in small ways, just giving up the lunch plans you would have had or little things you would have done if your kids were in school all day. So homeschooling is definitely, I think, one of those acts of service. When we do it unto the Lord, it pleases him. So I want to encourage you in that. One of the things that has been really important for me as we've served is to find examples for myself and for my kids of people who have served well. And one of those people for me historically has been George Washington Carver, who was an African-American man who was born the year before the Civil War ended. So he was born into slavery in Georgia. He became one of the greatest agricultural scientists, black or white, in the early 20th century. And one of the many things he did was find uses. He would find crops that would would give some life back into the southern soil that had been depleted from cotton. So he found ways to grow peanuts and sweet potatoes and legumes and all kinds of different things that restored the soil and helped restore the economy of the South after the Civil War. So here was a man who was using his gifts to serve others in a culture that had discriminated against him. He was not bitter. He just had a heart to serve. And one of his quotes is one of my favorite. I keep it tacked up on my bathroom mirror and in my laptop in my office. And it's a little long, so I'm going to dissect it for us. But he says, George Washington Carver said, "My purpose alone must be God's purpose, to increase the welfare and happiness of his people." So he's saying that his purpose in life is to increase the welfare and happiness of God's people. And he says, human need is really a great vacuum which God seeks to fill, with one hand in the hand of a fellow man in need and our other hand in the hand of Christ. He said that Christ could get across that vacuum, and I, George Washington Carver, became an agent. Then the passage, "I can do all things through Christ which strengthened me," came to have new meaning. And so here is what he says as he's this agent, and he's holding Jesus in one hand, and he's holding somebody in need in the other hand, and Christ's power flows through him. Here is what he said that I want us to focus on. "As I worked on projects which fulfilled a meaning, a real human need, forces were working through me which amazed me. I would often go to sleep with an apparently insoluble problem. When I woke, the answer was there." Haven't you ever gone to sleep in tears over a child that had a character issue or wasn't walking with the Lord or couldn't get an algebra problem? And you go to sleep in tears and you wake up and it's like the Lord has spoken to you somehow during the night and you know exactly what to do. George Washington Carver says, when we serve others, God unleashes that power in our lives. So I quickly want to give you an example of that from my own life. And then I'm going to bring 3 of my very close friends up to share some examples of how God has used service in their lives and how they have served others through their homeschooling. So in the early days of homeschooling, after I had been threatened with jail, my family and I spent about 8 years lobbying for good legislation in South Carolina. And there was one committee hearing, the Senate Education Committee hearing in 1992. And it was really the whole ball of wax. It had been like Narnia in South Carolina, homeschooling, always winter and never Christmas. And we had this one hearing standing between us and a good law. And I had already been told by the chairman of that committee that there was no way we could get our good homeschooling law passed. This was our last hurdle. I'll never forget, my husband was out of town that night, and I went to bed in tears. We had, as a community, a homeschool community, we had sent out a postcard, and people had been fasting and praying, some people for 3 days, for this hearing and for the testimony I needed to give. And as I went to sleep that night, I just had nothing. And I just remember just sobbing myself to sleep. About 5 o'clock that morning, it was like Jesus tapped me on the shoulder and said, Zan, get up. I've got a legislative plan for you. And I wrote in about 45 minutes one of the best legislative plans I had ever seen. And that is no brag. This was like the Lord was just leading and guiding me. But it involved about 10 or 12 people I needed to meet with before this hearing started at 9:30. And so I got the boys up and dressed. We ran down to the legislature. I had this list of 10 people. I could have worked for 6 weeks to try to meet with each of these people and never gotten them. And one by one, as I stood outside this hearing room, was like the Lord brought each of these people to me. I told them what I needed to do, what we needed to accomplish in this hearing, and what the part each one of these played. It was people from the State Department of Education. It was legislators. It was senators. It was pretty amazing. And that day in the Senate Education Committee hearing, our bill passed unanimously, and then the law passed. So I have no doubt it was all those families fasting and praying. And it was the Lord, as we were trying to serve the homeschooling community, unleashed that power that George Washington Carver was talking about, where we would go to sleep with an apparently insoluble problem, and wake up knowing exactly what to do. So I just want to tell you that that is one of the joys of serving. When you lay yourself out there for other people, lay your life down, it's amazing the power that the Holy Spirit unleashes in your life. And with that comes a great sense of purpose and joy. So I want to bring my friends up. I'm going to tell you who's coming. We have Eujeana Chism. You all know Eujeana. She is the one who puts on this party for us every year and takes care of it. Eujeana has 4 children and grandchildren, and she's just been a real light in terms of the way they've served in their homeschool. We have Sheri DalPorto. I'm sorry, I just butchered your last name, Sheri. And it's not because I don't love you. You're one of my homeschool heroes. And Sheri, how many children do you have? 6?
6.
Mm-hmm. And 2 grandchildren. And I just love watching the joy in Sheri's life with her family. They're in ministry in a camp in North Carolina, and they just as a family have this servant's heart. So, and then the last person I want to introduce is Shannon Harrison. Shannon has 4 children?
5.
5, okay. These wonderful big families. Shannon's husband is a pastor, and every time I talk to Shannon, they have some new service project going on. They took care of an elderly woman until she died. They've had people from the church who have stayed with them. When I called her today to ask her a question, she was in an assisted living facility helping some of the elderly people there. My dad was in one of those. He called them inmates, helping some of the inmates with problems they had. So I just want to say to the 3 of y'all, thank you so much for the example you have been of Christ's light and Christ's joy in so many different people. So I'm just going to ask you to start, maybe you, Shannon, just tell us some of the things you've done as a family that has incorporated your children in serving and what that's meant to you as a family.
Okay. One of the things that we've done with our kids is my husband is involved with youth camp for a lot of churches within our state and area. And so we have a program called STAC, which is servant training at Christian camp. And so that's something that we've always encouraged our own children to be involved in. And so when kids work STAC, they actually pay for themselves to go to camp that week. They don't get to go for free. So they actually have to earn their money to be able to go. And my kids have done that every year since they were 13 to go and work and help during the junior week. That's something that we've always done. Another thing that we've done is when some of the kids graduated high school, we encouraged them to, before starting college, to do some kind of service project. So our oldest went and helped at a Christian school first semester, and the second semester she went and helped in Mexico and a missionary there and helped homeschool their family. And that mom is now one of my customers. So that's kind of exciting how the Lord just brought that together.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, so that's really neat. And then one of the things that we had no idea, with her doing this, when she came back and started college, she tested out of Spanish 1, 2, and 3 and got credit for all those and didn't have to pay for it. So having that immersion along with the BJU Press Spanish curriculum that we use really helped with the grammar part, and that immersion just kind of capped it off. So that was an unexpected blessing for her with that. And then another daughter went and volunteered at the Christian Servicemen's Center and helped there in Corpus Christi, Texas. We have some friends that ran that at the time, helped with the Wounded Warriors Project when she was down there for a semester. So we kind of tried to help them look for areas to serve. I would say the number one thing is serving starts at home. And if you don't teach them at home, and have confidence in that serving, it is going to be harder for them to be able to go out and do. So like I listened to Zan's thing about making meals and taking things over. And if you don't have them help you cook and you don't have them help you do those things, they won't have that confidence to be able to do it. And, Zan mentioned my husband's a pastor. We have several wonderful cooks at our church, and we have several other ladies that cook well too, but they don't have the confidence to help out because they're just not sure in that. And I really want to encourage you. get your kids to help you at home, because that is the first place where service starts. Bible says, by love, serve one another. And if they can't serve their siblings, it's going to be harder for them to serve someone else, which another thing that I notice as I see people, one time a lady was visiting our house and she needed something from the car. And she said, go get this from the car for, your brother. I need it. And the kid said, what are you going to give me? And my heart just sunk, because that kid was learning, I will do this if you give me something. And that's not something you want to train your kids on. You want them to do it because they love their sibling. They love you, so it's being careful and cultivating those things. Not that we never gave our kids money for chores and stuff, but we had certain chores you do because you're part of a family and God put you in our family, and you do this because we serve together. So I would say it starts at home. We've, like she said, we had Mrs. Tuttle, who actually I was her service project first because I was a young, newly married mom who had moved from Florida to the Chicago area, the big city. And I was super, my husband worked second shift and didn't get home sometimes till 3:00 in the morning, and I was home alone. So she took me under her wing, would do my laundry and cook us dinner and stuff, because when I was pregnant and I got sick. And so the Lord switched that role. Now it's been 30 years almost, and her family put her in we moved up to Wisconsin, and her family, she moved up here, and then her husband passed away. She moved back by family. Her family moved her here to be in an assisted living facility by us. And so we were able to actually keep her at her home for about 90% of the time. If we were out of town, I would take her to the facility. But the Lord allowed us to hold one hand with her while she took the Lord's hand. And it was a blessing for my children, because I got to see them help take care of her. Things like making Jell-O, and that was one of the few things she could eat. Taking the initiative to do things and going to the store and coming home with bird suet feeders because they knew she liked to watch birds, and we could hang it out of her window and things like that. That it started when they were young, but it's really neat how the Lord just, I think, blessed Mrs. Tuttle because she served our family. We were able to just turn it around.
Powerful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Shannon. Okay, Sheri, so I have to tell you what happened. Joe told me tomorrow morning he's going to take me to my favorite breakfast place, which is DePrato's. And he just told me that right before I was introducing you. So I have not lost my mind. So Sheri DalPorto, my restaurant is DePrato's.
I have to go there.
I feel better. Okay. So, Sheri, tell us a little bit about what service has meant in your family and what y'all have done to sort of cultivate that in your kids.
I think my husband and I both grew up in families where it was emulated to us from as long as I can remember, that's what you did. You served people. And they were, his mom taught in the Christian school. My dad was a principal. My mom was secretary. So we grew up in, if you were, going to be part of the family, you emptied the trash and you helped and you wiped the windows and whatever needed to be done at school and or at church or wherever. And when Andy and I got married, we just said, we want other people to be able to enjoy our children. We all enjoy our own children, but we want other people to enjoy our children. Don't want, we've got a big family. And when the kids were little and we'd walk into the restaurant with our little ducks stair-stepped, the first 5 are less than 6 years apart. So we would walk in and you would see the waitress or the waiter going, great, I've got this table. And it was so sweet to be able to remind the kids, you are serving your waiter by obeying mommy and daddy, by not throwing food on the floor, by being polite, by being aware of what's going on around you, by serving, by being thankful. And it was always sweet. And I don't know how many times like the manager ended up and came out and paid for our meal and that's not why we do it. And we wanted the kids to know that, but we also wanted them to know this is an opportunity. This may be the only time these people see Jesus, and you get to show them what a family should look like. And you're not yelling and bickering and, having food fights or whatever. As you say, we work at a camp, so we're around lots of people all the time. I think there's 1,600 people this week on the campsite. So there's a lot of people. So there's lots of opportunities to serve. And when the kids were little, we wanted them to start from the beginning, serving. Our director used to always say that he who dies with the dirtiest towel wins. And he used the analogy of Jesus washing the disciples' feet, and how humbling but how giving. And we want to have that dirty towel. So the mindset that even when they're 2, they can help wipe off the dining room table at camp or at the house or at church or whatever. And they can help by picking up pieces of trash. Make it a game, make it fun. Oh, let's go see who can find the most pieces of trash in the grass or whatever. Helping them and modeling it ourselves, because sometimes it's easy not to do that as a mommy. We tell our kids to be thankful, and we tell our kids to serve others, but they're going to catch what we do. What is it they say? A lot of life skills are caught and not taught. And it really is. They watch us, and how we respond to others. Probably being aware is another huge, like Shannon said too, you're looking for those opportunities. And it's not, how's it going to benefit me? It's, oh, this lady needs me to open the door. Or, oh, I see somebody carrying a box. I could help her. I've got 5 boys. So, there's lots of opportunities for them. And, when they're 2, they don't get it. But when you say, you are so strong, you helped that woman and you served her, you see them puff up like, yeah, I can help. It's just a little thing, but serving in that way. Training them and not retraining them. You're expecting them to do it from the beginning to serve other people. And the beauty of homeschooling sometimes is, oh, I know there's a need in this family in our church's life. So-and-so had surgery. We can postpone school until this afternoon and go make her a meal or go clean her house. It may not be the most glamorous thing, but we can scrub toilets. And even my 5-year-old could do that, and helping them learn from the very beginning, baking, babysitting. When they see mommy drop her plans to babysit so-and-so's baby while she goes to the doctor or whatever, they're learning, singing songs. It wasn't always something big and like we joined this organization and did this. It's just life. That's what we do. Opening doors, picking up trash, singing, and being intentional about it. A dear friend in our church, every Saturday night, they baked cookies as a family. And they took a plate to church, and they didn't know who they were going to give it to. But on the way to church, Dad prayed and said, ask the Lord to bless them and give them direction as to who to give those cookies to. And it was such a little thing. And some days they made gluten-free ones, and some days they didn't. But it was always such a blessing. And I remember our kids watching that and going, Mommy, why did Mr. Ken and Miss Marty do that? Well, because they wanted other people to see Jesus. And it's a little thing, but
it has. I want to tell those who are with us today, watching and listening, that Shannon and Sheri both are. They're 2 of our senior consultants at Homeworks by Precept, and everything about them. If you've ever worked with them or needed their help, you see that life of service in them. And the Lord we haven't spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to divide this up. I just picked out women I knew had a heart to serve. And it's so interesting that Shannon talked a lot about what their children did when they were older, but that it all starts at home. And then Sheri shares with us what what they did as her children were younger. But it all starts at home. And the key part is, regardless of age, older and younger, because there are different things that kids can do at different ages, it does begin with our example, and it does begin at home. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Eujeana, I want to flip over now and then have you talk about what your family life was like. Eujeana has 4 kids and multiple grandkids.
I do. I have 5 grandbabies and a 6th one on the way. So we're really excited about that. Well, when we began our homeschooling journey, of course, my husband's life verse was the Galatians 5:13. For brethren, ye have been called unto liberty, only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. I had to get my tissues because I'm going to get emotional because I'm tired. So bear with me. but we wanted to serve one another, and we wanted to teach our children to serve one another and to love each other. Okay, guys, you gotta help me.
You're doing great.
I'll do that. So in our homeschool, we wanted to teach them that service opportunity. So academics were really important, and we got our academics nailed down. And then we were serving in the church. And one of the things that they saw their daddy do was he worked with youth a lot. I was not one that would work with the youth as much, but I would help him. And we were able to serve on the missionary board for the Eujeanas. And we were able to plant Eujeana ministries in multiple churches, 5 or 6 or 7 churches. And he would take kids to camp with the Eujeana ministry. And of course, as a family, we worked in these ministries and we helped build these ministries. And they saw mom and dad, just like the other ladies were saying, it starts at home and it starts with you modeling that service in your community. So as we grew in our homeschool, I wrote some notes down so I could keep on track, because I'll get off track. One of the ministries that was local to us, our church had a community help ministry to help the elderly and the disabled, and they would collect wheelchairs and walkers and diapers, adult diapers, and things that somebody in that may have gotten hurt in an accident or that was older might need, bed pads, things of that nature. And they had a food pantry. And one of the things that I was very adamant about when I was homeschooling was nothing's going to interrupt my day. I was going to schedule appointments, after school. I had my school hours. They were not regular school hours, but they were my hours. And I wanted to focus on their academics. But when the lady that ran this particular ministry called, we stopped what we were doing, pencils down, and we ran to help her. She was just 5 minutes down the road, because she never knew when she was going to get a delivery of food, and she needed help stocking that pantry. And that was something that was important to us as a family, to be able to help with that ministry. So she knew that she could call us, and that the kids and I would come running, and we would help stock that. And we've got all kinds of pictures. We had fun doing that. And then the families that we were able to help and minister to and see salvations right there in the office of people that would come in. And one of the things, before she would give them anything, she would always give them the salvation message. And my kids got to see that and interact and just serving in that capacity. Another thing that we did is we got with other families. We got with 2 or 3 other families, and we would schedule, the other moms would all have a job. We would get together over coffee and figure out who's going to do what. And we would schedule going to nursing homes and assisted living homes to minister. And we would go and we would sing. One of us would schedule the program per se for our kids. But this was just 2 or 3 other families where we had, of course, we had 4 kids. They had 4, they had 6. So it was a big group by the time just 3 of us got together. And then we would minister in song, but not just in song. We might do a dramatic reading. We might do a book report that the kids did, and they would get to share with these folks in the assisted living and the nursing home. And they do dramas and all kinds of things, and they were ministering, but we didn't let it stop there. We just didn't go and perform and then leave. We would stay for an hour or so afterwards and actually hold their hand and communicate and get into the community. And they loved it when we came. And just seeing that ministry, seeing the kids interact with the older folk that were in there, in those homes, was just a huge blessing for me as a mom and for the other moms. And then we'd take the kids later and go to a park or something and let them play together. But they did such a great job. The other thing that my kids, one of my daughters got the opportunity twice. She loved to sew, and that was an extra activity that we did with her. We would take her to learn how to sew, and she did some competitions in 4-H and things like that. But she got the opportunity to take a missions trip down to the Dominican Republic, and she was able to sew for those ladies and teach those ladies how to sew. And it was funny, the group that she went with put her in charge as a teenager because she had more skill and more knowledge of the sewing. And they would take sewing machines and they would fill the suitcases with all kinds of material that they would get on sale and teach those ladies to sew there in the Dominican. So that was a neat opportunity to see that. Then my other daughter, through watching us serve through the years, she her 12th grade year, she went into the local college where she was going to go to college, and she had a therapy dog that she had trained. And a lot of times you'll see the therapy dogs in the medical facilities, but what about the students in the colleges that come to the college and they aren't able to bring their animals because they're staying in the dorm and they're at midterms and they just want to cuddle with one of their pets? And so she went in and she paved the way, and I didn't help her with this. I just advised her, but she said, this is a ministry I want to do. And so she went to the head of the departments and she said, how can I do this? Maybe for midterms and finals. And they worked it out. She had insurance and everything with her therapy dog, and she was able to go into the library. And it was funny because I went once and watched, and those college students would just get around her and she would be in the middle. It was like a K-5 class or something where the little ones, the preschoolers, would get there. And they would just pet on the dog, and he would just move from one to the other, and they absolutely loved it. She got interviewed, but she was able to let her light shine and show Jesus through that ministry. And it's something that she was doing actually up until a few years ago when we got locked down. And so she's working on another dog right now to get that one trained to possibly continue that ministry. So it was just really fun to watch them take that service and take it out. And then, of course, there is the caregiving. My grandmother was really sick one year, and they saw that my parents and my husband and I, we helped care for my grandmother, and they did too as children, but they saw that. And then later in life, when we had a loved one that needed that same assistance, they were right there. They were right there. And I'm not going to go further because I will fall apart. But you ladies know what I mean. And I will just tell the community, in December, my husband passed away. And it's okay because he's with Jesus, and we all knew that. But to see the love of my kids serving their father after he served them and showed them and served in the community, what a huge blessing. They have so many great memories of being with him and learning from him and the service that he did within the community. So I'm really thankful for that. So learning to serve in your community and to serve your family and to serve the loved ones, huge blessing as you move on into life. So
well, thank you, Eujeana. Hey, listen, as we wrap up, Sharon and Sheri, do either one of y'all have anything you want to say in 1 minute that you want to leave our parents with? If you don't, it's fine. If you've got anything the Lord has laid on your heart, we'd love to hear it.
A verse that just popped up in my mind while you guys were speaking earlier was Philippians chapter 2. I don't remember the exact verse, but it says, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. And that's just something that it's hard because we're selfish people by nature, honestly. And it's something we have to intentionally do, but try to encourage your children and leading it by example. That's a good verse to use.
Perfect.
And like Shannon said too, you start early, start when they're little itty bitties, and it's what we do. Your last name is DalPorto. It's what we do. You are a Christian. It's what you do. You serve. And even if it's not perfect, they're practicing and they're building that habit so that when they do get to be teenagers and adults, it's second nature. It's habit. You don't have to think about serving, opening the door, picking up something, serving others. It's what you do. It's what we do. And ultimately we do it to serve the Lord, but it's what we do.
Amen. Well,
and one more thing. Can I say one more thing? Just
sure.
Recognizing it when your kids do it, recognize the good things. We're so quick to call out when they do something wrong. and recognizing when they've been helpful and just how appreciative, that builds them up.
Amen.
Exactly. Academics are important, but life skills and learning to serve is so much more important.
Like Shannon said, catch your kids doing right.
Yeah.
I have a minute here at camp who will always say, I caught your son. And I'm always like, I caught him. He parked 2 parking places down. So he left 2 places for somebody else to park. And I'm like, that's a little thing when you're 16, but it started when he was little, when he saw daddy do that. So catch him doing right. Like you said.
Our theme for camp this year is God and country. And so we have a freedom, liberty to do right is what that is. So I bought these little bracelets and I'm going to give them to the kids, and I'm going to tell them, going to give each of our stack workers. And when you see a junior camper doing something good, doing something right, give them, it's got that, that rubber thing engraved on there, and they're all going to want one, so I thought it'd be kind of fun just to give them something like that to encourage them. We need to recognize the good and not always the bad.
Yes.